The radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Thursday, March 13th. March is just chugging along here. On Monday, I'll be in Wilmington, North Carolina. If anybody's there, let me know. Yaron at yaronbrookshow.com. Email me and maybe we can get together. All right. And then week after that, I'm in London doing a bunch of different things. All right, today, lots to cover. We'll talk about the ceasefire, imminent, between Ukraine and Russia. Well, not so imminent. We'll talk about Trump's freaking out about the European Union and stuff about tariffs. Can't go a day without talking about tariffs. It is the issue of our time, it seems. We'll talk about the NAEU. What is the NAEU, Yaron? I don't know. It's the North American Economic Union. It's a new proposal by economist Rubini. And yeah, I'm in. I finally found somebody who proposes something vis-a-vis U.S., Canada, Mexico relationship that makes 100% sense. I didn't think I would agree with Rubini, but I do completely. So yeah, we're in on the NAEU. We'll talk about science funding. A lot of stuff going on with science funding. We'll just cover a little bit of it, but there's a lot of panic, justified panic about what's going on with science funding. And then we'll talk a little bit about the courts overturning DOGE, overturning Trump, and how that's going to play out, because this is just phase one, and then there's appeals and appeals and appeals in the Supreme Court. God, there's going to be so much there, so much. We'll talk about proposals for taxes in the Republican budget. We'll talk about the EPA again. I think I underestimated yesterday just how big of a deal what the EPA is doing. It's much more than just the climate change stuff. It's a whole reconsideration of the regulatory state. It is truly fantastic. You have to have some good news somewhere at some point, sometime. God, EPA is where the good stuff is happening right now. And it's big because, the one thing that has a stranglehold on American business and on the entire ability to build, which I'm all for, build, is environmental regulation. And the EPA is, I think, it seems to be taking the most dramatic steps in its history to dismantle the environmental regulations that are prohibiting growth or prohibiting building. And building, I mean just economic growth. And they're really doing it, right? They're taking it step by step. Again, I think they've all read Alex Epstein's manual on how to undo all the regulatory barriers to economic growth, and we're seeing real effects. So probably, again, the most positive thing coming out of this administration is going to be environmental regulation and energy. Those are the areas, and good. Look, they're huge. They're not small areas. He's gonna complete disaster and mess everywhere else, but at least there it looks like it's gonna be very positive and strong. So much for me never having anything positive to say. Yeah, well, that won't change anything. And finally, I want to correct something that I said like 2 days ago about the Druze community in Syria and about what's going on in Syria. That was probably fake news spread by Al Jazeera. So we will correct that and reorient you in terms of what's going on in Syria towards the end of the show. So I didn't want to go by. And I'll be in Israel soon and even have more to say about what's going on in Syria once I brush up on my Israeli news. I haven't been following Israeli news that much, the last few weeks, just because not that there hasn't been huge amounts of stuff going on there. There has. It's just like Trump sucks up all the news. All right. Reminder, the way we do this is I get to talk for a while. I talk about the news, and then you guys ask questions. But you can ask questions while I'm talking. That's the way it works. So anything comes to mind on the topic of discussion or on anything about philosophy, objectivism, history, Middle East, economics, tariffs, Trump, anything you want, you can ask. Dating advice, I often get that, right? Just use the super chat feature. Those are the questions I answer. I don't try not to respond to what's going on in the chat. Sometimes I get sucked into it, but I try not to respond. So use the super chat, ask questions. That way you get to shape what I talk about by asking those questions. Tom, we've got Catherine and Silvanos already doing stickers. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That is a way to support the show without asking a question, which is great. Please consider doing that. All of you, if you're not a subscriber, subscribe. If you haven't liked the show, like it. Like it every show. And finally, Tom says that he will be at my March 29th seminar. That is super exciting. I think we've now got 5 people, which is probably enough to get it done. I'd like to get it up to 10, 15, 20. 20 is the max. I have no idea what demand is going to be is like. So far 5. But I'm really hopeful that more people will sign up. So if you're interested, just go to yaronbrookshow.com, scroll down to where we have the information about the event on March 29th in London. We'll talk about it more later, but please consider joining us for a discussion on how to apply egoism to your life in every aspect of your life. All right, let us start. So ceasefire. So I think you know that Ukraine, after negotiations happened in Saudi Arabia, we talked about this a couple of days ago, Ukraine agreed to basically a ceasefire with no real conditions, just no fighting going on at the current, whatever the current lines are of demarcation of the battlefield the day the ceasefire is announced. And Ukraine, after a lot of pressure from the United States, agreed to do that without security guarantees, without guarantees about what the final peace deal will happen. Trump twisted their arms and they said yes. They should have said yes right away because, anyway. But yeah, with all the drama and humiliation and fighting and just a bunch of drama, which I think was good. I think the drama was good. My view is the whole Zelensky-Trump drama was excellent because we got a real, unfiltered, live look at how thuggish and how infantile Trump is. So in that sense, and what really happened, what's really valuable about all this, is that Europe got to see what he's really like. So if any of them thought, oh, well, maybe this is just posturing and maybe he'll change. No, this was unequivocal. And Europeans since then have rallied and we'll see what they actually do, but they've made the right statements and they're trying to move towards some kind of unity and some kind of military European arrangement. And look, even today, without European coordination and European all of this, if Europe went to war with Russia without U.S. hampering either, U.S. basically providing intelligence, but no troops, no additional weapons, just Europe goes to war with Russia without the U.S. shutting down their F-35s, Russia would be wiped out in days. It's really no contest. It's not even close. Russia does not have the weapon systems. It does not. Europe could field a much larger army than Russia. Certainly in the first few days, Russia couldn't take Ukraine. It's such a joke army. It's such a pretend military that they've thrown everything they have at Ukraine, which has no military, which had almost nothing and no sophisticated equipment and no F-35s, barely, how many F-16s have they got? And they just got them recently. Ukraine has nothing, right? Nothing. Europe would, a week at most. I mean, if it happens, you'll be able to call me on it. But it's not even close. Russia's army is pathetic. I mean, just think about how bogged down it is in Ukraine and how much of Ukrainian territory it's had to retreat from and how little of its goals it has achieved and how small the Ukrainian army is, how poor its weapon systems are, and how weak the support it's gotten from the US and European allies in terms of weapon systems and permission to use them, and extrapolate that on the Finnish, Swedish, Norwegian, Danish, German, French armies, and I haven't even brought in the UK, forget it. Russia's gone. So yeah, I've said this from the beginning of the war. War with Europe right now would be an absolute disaster. Think of the hundreds of thousands of men Russia has lost. Think of the amount of equipment they've lost. I mean, they're literally using T-55s, tanks from the 50s and 60s on the battlefront because they've lost the T-72s and T-82s and T-92s, which are supposed to be state-of-the-art and turn out to be garbage. They don't control the airspace above Ukraine. They can send missiles and drones, but they can't send planes. Really, Russia is not militarily strong. They've relied on the fact that Ukraine is weak. Anyway, where were we? Yes. So we had a Ukraine agreement to ceasefire. And then the question is, what would Putin do? And there's been a lot of speculation over the last couple of days that Putin would say no, and a lot of stuff published about why he would say no. Really, Russia wants to weaken the U.S. negotiating position in Ukraine. It wants to create tension between Trump and Europe, which it's already succeeded in doing. It really, it has no interest in a deal right now. It wants to drag this out. It wants to drag it out. It certainly does not want peacekeepers in Ukraine, European peacekeepers, American peacekeepers. They don't want European peacekeepers there. They do not want, at this point, a war with Europe. Maybe sometime in the future, but not right now. They continue to insist, on Russian sovereignty over all the Ukrainian territories they've seized, plus territories they haven't seized. And they want demilitarization. They want a whole south of Ukraine to be demilitarized, including Odessa. Basically they want the dismantling of the current Ukrainian government. They want a new government, and the only government they'll accept is a puppet government of Russia. In other words, there's nothing America could give them in any kind of realistic way. This is what we've been hearing, that would satisfy what the Russians actually want. Of course, I didn't even mention no NATO membership. Ever, right? Ever. So, today, Putin went into a press conference, and everybody's like, "Oh, are you going to accept the ceasefire?" And I'm watching because his aides and advisors, a few hours before the press conference, had been telling journalists, "No, there's no way we accept this ceasefire. All these conditions that I mentioned, they state, and they're just not going to do it. There's just no way they're going to do it." And that's what they keep saying. They keep saying to everybody. And then Putin goes out there. So that's the headlines. So I'm scrolling for news to talk to you about, and the headline is Russia's going to reject the ceasefire deal. It's a no-starter. And then Putin gets out there, and suddenly the headlines change, and it's like Putin accepts ceasefire deal, and like Twitter's going mad. All these postings from the press conference live. Putin's accepting the ceasefire deal. And whoa, that's a surprise. Didn't expect that. Didn't see that coming. And then like 10 minutes later, Putin rejects ceasefire deal. Because what he said was, yeah, I think the ceasefire deal is interesting. We could talk about that. And then he paused. Everybody tweeted, he's accepted. And then he says, under certain conditions. For example, we would insist that during this period, the Ukrainian army enlists no new soldiers. The Ukrainian army does no training. The Ukrainian army receives no weapons systems from the West. But happy to discuss the ceasefire with the United States, only the United States, no Europeans, no Zelensky, but with the United States, right? So I'm not willing to accept the ceasefire as proposed. I want a bunch of other things. You know, he says, we agreed with the proposals to cease hostilities in Ukraine. That's when everybody got excited. But the cessation must lead to long-term peace and eliminate the root cause of the initial crisis. Right? We also want guarantees that Ukraine will not mobilize, that is, get more troops, train soldiers, no training, or receive weapons during the 30-day ceasefire. I wonder if Trump will give him that. At the same time, by the way, Trump was in the White House talking to reporters and saying, we'd like to see a ceasefire from Russia. We want it to stop, and so on. But we will see. We will see. I mean, there's no question that Russia only wants a ceasefire if it improves its positions and increases its potential post-ceasefire to gain significant ground in Ukraine. And Trump should not accept these kind of conditions from Putin. If he does, then we know exactly where his loyalty lies. But it does seem like, that Putin will hum and he'll ha and he'll talk to Trump and he'll present his demands. But at the end of the day, he does not want a ceasefire. And the only time he'll want a ceasefire is if Ukraine is making advances, which they are in small ways in the Eastern Front, although they're losing, it seems, big time in Kursk, in that area that they invaded into Russia. It looks like they're going to be pushed out of that area by Russian forces. But in the meantime, they are making some progress in the East, taking back land that the Russians occupied over the last few months. But it's slow, and it's very small. It's going to be interesting. Witkoff is going in to talk to. He did such a good job with Hamas that we're now sending him to Russia, and he's going to talk to Putin, and we will find out more when Witkoff comes out, I guess, of that meeting. Putin is going to require the international community and everybody to recognize the land that he's stolen from Ukraine. He's requiring NATO and Europe to back off. But he's always going to say, I want peace, just on my terms. I want peace, just I want Ukraine government to go. I want peace, but I want Ukraine to be demilitarized. I want peace, but I want everything I've always wanted from Ukraine. I will give up nothing. I will compromise on it. You see, this is the thing about Trump. Like Putin, assuming he's going to negotiate. Putin knows how to negotiate. Like, you have to respect that. He knows how to negotiate. You start out with your most demanding proposal. You start out with everything you've ever wanted. Like Zelensky's gone, a puppet government, demilitarization, recognition of all the stolen lands as yours. You start out with all of it. And then you sit down negotiating table, maybe negotiate some of those away. Trump started by saying, yeah, no NATO, elections in Ukraine, no return to the 2022 or 2014 borders. I mean, he basically gave away half before they even sat to negotiate. This is the guy from the art of the deal, clearly clueless about how to deal with dictators. I guess it's hard for him to deal and negotiate with people he admires as much as he admires Putin. Oh, what did I do? I did something that I didn't want to do. There it is. All right. So we'll keep an eye out for you on the ceasefire. I'll keep you updated on what's going on in Ukraine as things develop. But for now, again, nothing really new. Russia is basically rejecting the proposal. Anyway, as you know, because we talked about this, the Europeans have responded to yesterday's steel and aluminum tariffs on EU steel and aluminum, but everybody's steel and aluminum of 25%, by placing selective tariffs on U.S. goods. One tariff that they selected, probably particularly to hurt red states, some red states, was a 50% tariff on whiskey, on American whiskey. Do you even call American whiskey, or is it bourbon? I don't know. I don't know how it is. Anyway, Trump is not happy about this. Trump is very upset that the Europeans are daring to raise tariffs on America. I mean, that's not how it works. Only America is allowed to raise tariffs on everybody else. He does not accept these tariffs. Here's his post from today, I guess 12:58 p.m. This is your president. I keep reading these and going, he can't be president. It can't be possible. But of course, I did that for 4 years last time, and I think I've woken up from that delusion. No, this guy's the president. This is who many of you voted for. Here it is. The European Union, one of the most hostile and abusive taxing and tariffing authorities in the world, which is formed for the sole purpose of taking advantage of the United States. It's funny, I'm sorry. Has just put a nasty 50% tariff on whiskey. Now, is a 25% tariff on steel nasty as well, or is 50%, or I don't know, on whiskey? If this tariff is not removed immediately, the U.S. will shortly place a 200% tariff on all wines, champagnes, and alcoholic products coming out of France and other EU-represented countries. This will be great for wine and champagne businesses in the United States. I mean, if it's so great, why don't do it anyway? God, why wait? Why wait? Why don't we just, I mean, I don't understand Trump. Why not just increase tariffs to 200% on everything? Everything imported to the United States should have a 200% tariff. And that will shut down imports into the United States. Of course, there won't be much tax revenue as a consequence because it all shut down. And people will have to, raise their own chickens in their own backyards. We'll have to buy local. And if there's nothing to buy local, we'll have to build it. We'll take all that money we've invested, I don't know, in the stock market, in artificial intelligence, in the latest, greatest technology, in Silicon Valley. I mean, Silicon Valley's leftist anyway. Why would we invest money in Silicon Valley? We can take all the money we invest in Silicon Valley and investing in things that we could buy overseas, but shouldn't. We should grow everything locally. I mean, Trump is nuts. We've talked about this. I didn't know this, but maybe you guys knew this, that the EU was formed for the sole, no other purpose, of taking advantage of the United States. And of all things, whiskey, that's what got him. The whiskey, right? You know, you can tax other stuff. You can tax farm products that China's doing. You can tariff all these other things, but whiskey can't do that. So I'm looking forward to French wines being 200% more expensive. I'm quite happy with my California wines, maybe some Chile wines, Argentinian wines, until he gets mad at them. And you can't get champagne in the United States. Champagne is copyrighted. Yep. That is one of his tweets. But that wasn't enough. Somebody from the editorial board went on, I think, Fox News and criticized Donald Trump's economic policies. Oh, my God. This is Donald Trump, I think, a little bit earlier. The globalist Wall Street Journal has no idea what they are doing or saying. They're owned by the polluted thinking of the European Union. They're actually owned by his buddy, right? So they're owned by the polluted thinking of the European Union, which was formed for the primary purpose of screwing the United States. Their Wall Street Journal thinking is antiquated and weak and very bad for the United States. But have no fear. We will win on everything. Egg prices are down, oil is down, interest rates are down, and tariff-related money is pouring into the United States. The only thing you have to fear is fear itself, quoting FDR, I guess. Unhinged, not completely there. I mean, we know ignorant. Yeah, there you have it, President of the United States. Then he posts, the U.S. doesn't have free trade. We have stupid trade. The entire world is ripping us off. I don't know. I mean, they're selling us stuff we want at very low prices. I can't believe how much we're being ripped off. We choose to buy it. Prices are low. That's why one of the reasons we're buying them. Quality's pretty good. Otherwise, we wouldn't buy them. But we're being ripped off. We're sending pieces of paper that people like Trump and Biden and Obama inflate all the time, i.e., it loses its value all the time. We're sending in pieces of paper whose value is declining and getting stuff we need in order to live and eat and clothe ourselves and prosper. It's really horrific. It really is sad and bad for us. You know, we talked about the aluminum and if you had to build plants that make aluminum in the United States, given the tariff now is 25%, which is huge, what would that require? Well, according to the president of the American Aluminum Association, right, for the U.S. to set up one new aluminum smelting factory, it would take 8 to 10 years. Wow. If you can find a power grid strong enough and willing to commit to 20 plus years of service. So, you know, every one aluminum job that might be lost in Canada because of these tariffs will result in 13 jobs lost in America. Basically, a 25% tariff on aluminum is going to gut American jobs. It's going to, because it raises the cost of aluminum. You can't buy it in America. You have to import it. Raise the cost by 25%. And now everything made from aluminum is 25% higher. Companies that build stuff using aluminum can't sell it overseas because they're more expensive than their competitors who build this stuff from aluminum in other countries. Basically, what Trump is doing is the exact opposite of what he's claiming. That is, we're gutting our manufacturing. We're destroying our manufacturing base. We're destroying our capacity to manufacture stuff made from aluminum and steel. Now remember, the aluminum deal we have right now with Canada was one that Trump negotiated in 2018 and said it was the greatest and best and most beautifulest deal ever in human history. In the meantime, we saw last week a double-digit increase in U.S. steel prices. So if you're buying steel from U.S. manufacturers, it's double-digit. You know, it's over 10% more expensive now than it was a week ago. And steel prices in the United States, for if you're a manufacturer and you need steel, automobiles, washing machines, I don't know, a lot of people need steel. I mean, construction. Literally, to buy steel today in the United States from a U.S. manufacturer costs double the world market price. Double. Double. I mean, again, it might make sense, in spite of the tariffs, to take your factory and move it to Mexico, buy Mexican steel at half the price, build your stuff, and then sell it into America. Even if there's a 25% tariff, it might be cheaper. And companies are going to start looking at that. Moving to Vietnam, Mexico might be too expensive. Moving out of the U.S. U.S. is going to become very, very expensive to do business. My guess is if they don't back down from these tariffs, manufacturing in the U.S., which is at peak right now, never manufactured more stuff in the U.S. ever, with fewer people because of automation. Manufacturing will start declining, and in 4 years, when Trump is done, we will actually be manufacturing less stuff in America than we did before. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if whole companies start moving out. You know, some people think that all this tariff stuff is to get attention and also to get people coming to grovel, to beg for relief, to pay for relief, to, you know, I mean, imagine if that is truly the case. Imagine if that's what's motivating Trump, not his grand theory about the tariffs, but his swampiness. Swampiness. I've got a good swampiness story. Did you hear that the Trump family wants to buy Binance? Binance is the big crypto exchange whose founder and CEO is right now in jail, right? And is looking for a pardon. And at the same time, the Trump family organization wants to buy his company. And the head of that organization, at least in theory, is the guy who can give him the pardon. Interesting. Interesting, right? Who knows? This is amazing because the Australian government is really dumb, and it's really bad on pretty much everything. But the Australian Prime Minister said that they are not going to retaliate against Trump's steel and aluminum tariffs. He said that it would amount to, quote, economic self-harm paid by consumers. Wow. Of all countries, I didn't expect it from the leftist government in Australia. How do they get it? And all these other people don't. Amazing. Cheers to Australia, which is not, you know, politically has been a disaster, but the Australians actually get it. Economic self-harm paid by consumers. Yep. Trump shot the American economy in the knee. We shouldn't shoot our economy in the knee as well. Supkaski is moving to Australia. You might ask, are tariffs bad for growth? So somebody has analyzed 5 decades of data from 150 countries and this is the conclusion in an economic paper. Using aggregate annual data for 151 countries, 34 advanced and 117 developing, over the period of 1963 to 2014, we find that tariffs have economically and statistically significant adverse effects on output growth. The impact is persistent and increases with the magnitude of the tariff change. And that, by the way, includes countries like South Korea, who had a lot of tariffs as they grew very fast. So pretty amazing result and statistically significant. So, yeah, tariffs suck. What's new under the sun? Nothing, but there we go. And we're in a tariff war with all the characteristics of a tariff war, and with all the stupidity of a tariff war, and with all the damage of a tariff war. Last I looked, let's look again, just to make sure. Yep, last I looked, the NASDAQ was down. It's down a little more now. It's down another 1.91%. That is led by tech stocks, but the S&P 500 is down 1.43%. Yeah, it's a bloodbath out there. Year to date, the NASDAQ is down 10.4%. And we could give up another 10% pretty easily. So nobody but Trump this time, he seemed to care in his first administration. This time, doesn't seem to care. Doesn't seem to care. All right. Let's see. Let's talk about the NAEU because it's very relevant to this. So, Nouriel Roubini, who is often on Fox Business, on CNBC, commentator, economic commentator. He is also has a number of investment funds and has Roubini Macro Associates, and anyway, a big shot over the last 20 years, I'd say, on particularly on news networks in terms of economic commentary. He has this amazing article today on something called Project Syndicate. It's called the Project Syndicate, the World's Opinion Page. And and first time I clicked on it, I got the whole thing, and now it's telling me I have to register. So I don't see the whole article, which is fine because I know what he says. Because I read it the first time. The article is titled Towards a North American Economic Union. And I think it is absolutely brilliant. And I'm not being funny. I'm actually serious. And I don't typically agree with Roubini. What Roubini is suggesting is basically an economic union between the United States, Canada, and Mexico, to a large extent mimicking the European Union. That is, imagine the United States, Canada, and Mexico basically having free movement of capital, goods, and people. Now, okay, immigration might take a little bit longer to get fully on board with. But imagine if you basically had open borders for capital and goods between Canada, the United States, and Mexico. At the same time, we normalize regulations across all three countries. Probably on American regulations, they're probably the most robust, although it would be nice if we shrunk them significantly in the meantime. I don't know that Roubini would agree with me on how much regulations need to shrink. But let's say we shrunk them. Let's say the United States also provided some, help with the cartels to Mexico as part of this agreement. But really, the main thing is free flow goods, capital, and people. Imagine, we basically got our bank regulations synchronized across all three countries. Here, by the way, I would go with Canada. Canada's bank regulations are a lot better than the US's. That's why Canada has not had any financial crisis in the last 200 years, and the United States has had, I think, 15. So we have similar banking regulations. We allow banks to branch into every one of those countries freely. We allow bank mergers across the different countries. In other words, we allow for full market integration. And over time, particularly as, let's say, the standard of living and productivity and wealth in Mexico increase, which I think it will dramatically, we allow for free movement of labor. And let's be honest here. With global warming happening, Canada is going to become more and more habitable, and some parts of the United States will become less and less habitable, and moving from the US to Canada will become tolerable. So you don't have to compare tariffs to income taxes because the two are unrelated. They have nothing to do with one another. God, people are so brainwashed by, the Trump zombies on Twitter and elsewhere. There's no relationship, zero, zilch, nada, between tariffs and income taxes. They're both two separate taxes. One doesn't affect the other. But you're not going to get any revenue. Revenue from tariffs are small. They're very, very low. And if you the more you raise tariffs, the less imports you get, the less taxes you collect. I mean, why is this hard? If tariff rates are low, then a lot of people import into the United States, and then you generate some revenue. Not a lot. The more you raise the tariffs, the less imports come into the United States. That's the whole point, right? Less imports come into the United States. You want to balance trade, and therefore the less revenue comes in. Run the numbers. It's simple math. This is not calculus. You don't even need algebra for this. Just run the numbers. Look at how much revenue comes in from income tax, how much revenue comes in from tariffs. Take the total imports in the United States, total imports, and divide and multiply it by a tariff that'll generate you the income tax. I am happy to get rid of the income tax, but you cannot physically, economically, metaphysically, you cannot mathematically replace it with a tariff. There is no such thing. Stop it, people. It's just dumb. You can't do it. There's not a tariff rate in the world that will allow you to replace income tax with tariffs. It mathematically doesn't compute. And the people who argue this on Twitter are Trump zombies. It's a Trump zombie syndrome. He said it once. I don't think he was even serious about it. And then an idiot like Ludwig repeats it. And then everybody goes crazy. But it's not mathematically possible. It just can't happen. I am the first one to say abolish the income tax, national sales tax. Get rid of the corporate tax, get rid of capital gains, get rid of the dividend tax, get rid of the wealth tax, get rid of all these taxes and replace it all with a sales tax. That you could do. That you could do. It would be regressive as hell, but I'm okay with that. But that is not a tariff. Tariff is a tax on imports. We just don't import enough stuff to be able to replace the income tax. We just can't do it. It just does not work. Flat sales tax, absolutely flat sales tax. Anyway, back to the North American Economic Union. You could, over time, also start, coordinating taxes between Canada, the United States, and Mexico. And because capital will flow based on where the taxes are lower. And therefore, Canada will have an incentive to lower taxes to U.S. rates, and maybe, I don't know what tax rates are in Mexico, and also coordinate better about what you're taxing. Are you taxing income? Are you taxing sales? Are you taxing capital? What are you taxing? I mean, I don't think you guys, I mean, just think of what will happen in Mexico alone. Productivity of labor in Mexico will increase several folds. Mexico will become a much richer country. Now you say, who cares about Mexico? Because the wealth they create we're bound on the United States. They will be producing more. We will be trading more with them. Remember, every trade is a win-win. So, U.S. will grow dramatically. Canada would grow dramatically. Canada, that's lagged U.S. growth for a couple of decades now, will accelerate growth. I mean, you could imagine ultimately, you know, in my dreams, this becoming a, you know, kind of a Northern American state, you know, Mexico, then Mexico and Canada maybe become states within the United States. That would be cool. And maybe we create America, not just a North American economic union. Maybe then you expand it to create an American economic union. And you bring on board Brazil and Argentina and Chile and Panama. And Panama's already on the dollar, Ecuador. Oh, by the way, part of this would be get rid of the peso, get rid of the Canadian dollar, and go on one currency. Go on one currency. Now, that would be beautiful. That would be a truly beautiful thing. So, yeah, I'm all for the North American Economic Union. I think the probability of it happening is zero. I think that would be the right number. But it's nice to dream. It's nice to have dreams. It really is. It could be amazing, and it's sad that Donald Trump, who has the ability to shatter the the conventional wisdom and shatter kind of the what most people think, instead of shattering it in the direction of freedom and prosperity, he's shattering it in the direction of, you know, authoritarianism and decline. Because the United States, if all of this goes through, the United States is in decline. United States is in decline. Under Trump, the U.S. will decline dramatically more than under Obama, Biden, Johnson, all these Democrats put together. He is, you know, you couldn't imagine if somebody wanted to come in as a Russian agent to destroy the United States' capacity to grow and be successful. You couldn't imagine anybody coming in and doing a worse job than what Trump is doing so far, with, again, the exception of EPA and energy. Unbelievably, first 50 days, unbelievably bad, worse than even I thought, and I was pretty down on Trump from day one. But this is so amateuristic, childish, pathetic. All right, talk about one other aspect of this. So, look, I'm the first one to say that government should not be funding science. Science should be funded by the private sector, by individuals, rich individuals, by corporations, by businesses, by charitable foundations like, you know, I don't know, Gates Foundation or whatever. They should be funding science. But the reality is that today, an overwhelming majority of science is funded in the United States by the government. And of all the things that government spends money on, all of it, that it shouldn't, I'd say this is the thing I would eliminate last. Because the reality is that it's going to take a while for the private sector to pick up. You'd want to cut government spending across the board first. You'd want to shrink the tax burden on businesses and on individuals so that they have more money, and then that money can start flowing into them privately funding science. And then when you shrink the government's support for science, you would shrink it gradually as private capital starts flowing in. But again, this is kind of almost the last thing you do, because first you want to get the economy going, you want to get wealth creation, you want to get people keeping more and more of their money, and then they have the capital to invest in science. But that is not the approach of Trump or of DOGE. No. Their approach is to basically gut science funding in the United States, which is basically equivalent right now in the short to medium term of gutting science and technology development in the United States. I mean, this is spending almost all the grants of the National Institute for Health. This is cancer research, Alzheimer research. I mean, and this is most of the research done in the world on health stuff is done by the United States. Now, I agree that the NIH, funds science badly. I agree completely. And it could be, in the short run, reformed before it was just shut down. So I would start with reform and then shutting down so as to start guiding the money into the right places. I agree completely. I've talked about this. They tend to fund old scientists, and the reality is that breakthroughs are done by young scientists. They tend to ignore the Caitlin Karikos. Of course, Caitlin would not get any money right now because she was doing mRNA. And as you know, Mary Benz, mRNA is the #1 killer in America today. It is destroying our planet and destroying humanity. It is very, very dangerous, unleashed by Karikos. So, that certainly wouldn't be funded by this NIH that we're talking about. So there's a way to do this. I would put Mary Benz in charge and say, okay, here's the budget. We're going to shrink it by 10% every year. Make it count. And she would cancel a lot of studies, and she would invest in a lot of new stuff. But she wouldn't just stop all grant review meetings, suspend them completely. And, just eliminate funding from thousands of scientists out there. Freezing payments even for ongoing research, things that are actually happening. And then you wouldn't go blindly and fire all the new workers in the NIH, right? The probationary ones. And the opposite. They're young, ambitious, with new ideas. They're the ones you probably want to keep. You might want to fire the unproductive ones, the ones being there for a long time and take things for granted and don't do anything realistic. You wouldn't probably cut total amount of funding. You would just start reallocating it to younger, more ambitious, more cutting-edge projects. And then, over time, shrink it as the private sector stepped in and moved. Right now, there's just the NIH. There's $47 billion of funding. That's not a lot of money on the U.S. budget, but it's a lot of money for the people receiving those grants. And Trump doesn't want to stop there. I mean, he is actually planning to ask Congress to cut science funding dramatically. Right? Dramatically. Of all the things to cut, this is what they want to cut. Why? Because science is the enemy. That's what we learned during COVID. Science are the bad guys. And remember that the people who learned that are teaching us now, or advocating now, that science is the enemy. The people who are cutting these programs are not the people who are Caitlin Karikos' friends. I know I'm not pronouncing her name right. She is a hero of mRNA. They hate her. They hate science. Now, in addition, what they're doing is they're going to universities under the guise of these universities have not dealt with anti-Semitism on campus properly, and they're cutting STEM money going to these universities. I get it. Stop funding gender and I don't know all these other fields. But why are you cutting funding for STEM? Why is that the first thing you're doing? This is a government that is hostile, and you can see by who they appointed head of the Health and Human Services. This is a government hostile to science, hostile to research, real research. Now, again, government shouldn't be funding any of this. But if you're going to cut government, you should be prioritizing. That is, this should be cut last. Government should be only there to protect individual rights. But we're far, far from that. And there's going to be a lot of cutting before we get there. And we're not even in the same universe. So what are you going to prioritize in terms of cutting? Are you going to prioritize cutting corporate welfare subsidies? Are you going to prioritize cutting regulations? Are you going to prioritize cutting, welfare? You're going to prioritize cutting Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, which is where the real money is? Or are you going to cut science funding? I don't think the issue is they're not principled. I think they're going after science funding partially because it's a low-hanging fruit. Who are they pissing off? A bunch of scientists. In MAGA, there's no group that is going to defend scientists. Nobody in MAGA is going to defend scientists. So it's a low-hanging fruit. That's why they're cutting it. And the people there, starting with RFK, are antagonistic to science as it is today. Now, for example, the National Cancer Institute have just been told that in order to publish information on certain topics, they have to get approval. So if they've done research and they found findings on a particular topic, they have to get approval if the topic is one of these. Vaccines. RFK has to approve if your research gets published on vaccines, on fluoride, on autism. His anti-scientific basis are the criteria by which the National Cancer Center is going to publish information. And then, as I said, you've got, Columbia University is getting their grants suspended because they didn't deal with anti-Semitism well. So STEM grants, are getting suspended. It's just unprincipled, just nutty behavior. This is from a Richard Hanania post. So I'll read you the post. So Judd got the following message from a scientist at a top 25 school. He was one of the handful of scientists at his university who voted for Trump. And reports they're all now completely ashamed of it, voting for Trump. And this is what he writes. This is the scientist at the top 25 university. I'm an NIH-funded biomedical scientist with conservative leanings. I know at least 8 dozen scientists, a small, closeted minority, who voted for Trump. largely because of frustration with DEI and extreme wokeness that had permeated every aspect of university life. Each one of us deeply regrets their vote for Trump and are utterly ashamed of it. We are absolutely horrified at how mindlessly destructive this administration has been to scientific institutions. They are single-handedly destroying the STEM dominance U.S. established over decades. Average Americans simply do not realize that we are now on the verge of a precipitous decline in STEM. We all admit that the warnings about Trump MAGA were on target. And the thing we argue about now is whether the damage is even reversible. All the lefty overreach was annoying as hell. But the MAGA disdain for science is 100 times worse. Couldn't have said it better myself. I told you in advance. This is just one field. Andrew asked, is this overstated? I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe they're really panicking right now. But I don't know if it's overstated. I'm not in that world. I see a lot of panic from academics, but you worry that they might be just left-leaning people who hate Trump anyway. And this is what their view of Trump derangement syndrome. This is a conservative. This is somebody who voted for Trump. That's what makes it interesting. Even if it is overstated. It's still bad. All right, quickly, let's talk about the courts. So a bunch of things, a bunch of court decisions against Trump going in. You remember the executive order about the Trump penalizing a couple of law firms that went after Trump. And he's now penalizing them, taking away the security clearance, not allowing them to argue in front of federal court. A U.S. district judge has ruled that, according to her, Trump exerted, quote, extraordinary power, and that these law firms proved they have suffered immediate damage from the penalties, and she has rescinded, at least temporarily, the executive orders. Or the impact of the executive orders. She warned that this order could damage the integrity of the entire legal profession, intimidating lawyers from taking up cases that the president views as going against his interests. Absolutely. But Trump is an authoritarian. This is exactly what he wants to do. He wants to intimidate lawyers. There is a law firm that's taken this case, right? The law firms have a law firm representing them. She continued, it sends little chills down my spine, this executive order. This executive order takes a wrecking ball to the rule of law. This is somebody else. This is Dane, the Williams and Conley attorney that is representing these law firms. The effect has been immediate. It will spell the end of the law firm. It's destructive to the law firm. Anyway, so this is put on hold. It'll go to court. It'll be appealed. Again, these kind of things. But in my view, that executive order is clearly unconstitutional, going out after particular law firms like that. And then another court has ordered thousands of federal workers reinstated. The firings having been reversed, the federal judge ordered the federal government to rehire thousands of employees dismissed from 6 agencies, saying that Trump's administration's justification for firing the probation workers had been a sham. The judge directed the Treasury and Veterans Affairs, Agriculture, Defense, Energy, and Interior departments to reinstate any employees who were improperly terminated. Again, this will go to appeal. and we'll see how it all plays out. So a lot of judges standing up to the Trump administration. What is the Trump administration's response to this? Well, Trump hasn't said anything yet, but a number of Congress people and Elon Musk have been very vocal about this. Their view is that any judge who goes up against Trump, who reverses one of Trump's executive orders or actions of DOGE, those judges should be impeached. Now, this is straight out of the playbook of authoritarians. Basically, get rid of judges you don't like and make the judiciary just a branch of the executive. This is Orban in Hungary, Putin in Russia. This is how they do it. This is how you take a free country and make it authoritarian. And Musk is actively promoting this regularly. This is one of his passion points. One of his passion points. Get rid of independent judges. Get rid of judges I don't like. Get rid of judges who reverse what the president has done. Now, there's an easy mechanism in our system. You appeal it, you go to federal court, ultimately you can appeal it to the Supreme Court, they can reverse, or they can rule something's unconstitutional, or they can, that's called the rule of law. But there are people in this administration, Elon Musk at the head of them, who despise the rule of law. All right. Let's talk about taxes a little bit. So while the continued resolution doesn't have the extension of the tax reductions in 2018 or new tax reductions, Republicans are working on a tax bill that will involve significant cuts. They will not only extend the expiring, remember the 2018 tax cuts expire in 2026. So they will extend the tax cuts, but they will also, this is a list of things they plan to do. Revive lapsed business tax breaks. These are loopholes, goodies that they can dish out to favored businesses. To favored businesses. Right? So this is a expand the swamp tax cut. Expanding the child tax credit. That's, their pro-baby policy. Loosening the cap on the state and local tax deductions by incorporating tax ideas for eliminating, local tax deductions. That was one of the things they did last time to penalize blue states. But it turns out that a lot of Republicans who live in blue states, and they're lobbying hard to make local taxes deductible again, because there was a huge tax increase on a lot of Republicans in blue states. And finally, incorporating Trump's ideas about eliminating taxes on tips, overtime, and Social Security benefits. In addition, the chairman of the Finance Committee, Republican, says he has a list of ideas that could easily top $5 trillion or more over a decade. Senators, for example, have submitted over 200 additional tax ideas to him, such as expanded low-income housing tax credit, changes to Opportunity Zone program for investment in low-income areas, and further cuts in their state tax. Notice that none of these tax changes involve getting rid of the income tax. Quite the contrary. All of these tax changes involve making our income tax system and corporate tax system much more complicated. Much, much, much more complicated. If you want to do tax reform that actually will spur economic growth, if you actually want to encourage entrepreneurship and encourage capital creation and wealth creation, it's very simple. I mean, put aside a sales tax that gets rid of the income tax. Let's say you keep the income tax. A flat tax, simple, done on a postcard. Lower the corporate income tax rate. Get rid of the capital gains taxes. Get rid of dividend taxes. Make it unbelievable simple. And make it easy for businesses to get started and founded and for them to grow and to prosper. This, you want to take an abomination of a tax code that we have today and make it even more of an abomination? It's just, again, pathetic Republicans. While this is going on in the Senate, Trump supposedly, according to Ludwig, who is constantly on television making wild claims, according to him, Donald Trump is considering a new tax policy where individuals that earn less than $150,000 annually pay no taxes, and where the revenue lost from that is made up by the External Revenue Service. Remember those guys? That is made up from tariffs, or now they're proposing a membership fee from countries trading with the United States. I have no idea how you do that, what that means, how you put that into place, and neither do they. So in other words, now the idea is we'll replace parts of the income tax, so people earning less than $150,000 with tariff. But even that is not possible. I haven't run the numbers yet because this is just breaking news. But I would bet you that too is impossible. Even there, tariffs are not enough. And, again, if you want to make our economy grow more, if you actually want to help America, this is not the kind of nonsense that you do. Ludwig is pushing this external tax revenue instead of internal taxation, which is just unbelievably stupid. And he's not a stupid guy. So he's bought into this MAGA kind of brainwash the public with stupidity and then, screw them in other ways. All right, let's go to some good news. So Alex Epstein is out today. No, today, with a Substack. Highly recommend everybody subscribe. AlexEpstein.com. Sorry, AlexEpstein.substack.com. And in the Substack, he talks about the EPA putting together really the biggest deregulatory action in U.S. history. Now, again, not legislation, so relatively easy to reverse, but still amazing. And he goes through what is involved. So Alex is saying this is what the EPA is doing. 18 deregulatory actions that were announced today is the biggest deregulatory action in U.S. history. This is huge. So Trump administration doing a few things right. So here's a few examples of this. And again, encourage you, Alex is a sponsor of this show. I encourage you to go read this on alexepstein.substack.com and subscribe. Don't just go, subscribe. Doesn't cost, I don't think, anything. 1, reconsideration of regulations on power plants. The Clean Power Plant 2.0. These Biden regulations would have effectively banned all coal plants and new natural gas plants by demanding impossible 90% carbon capture. Reconsidering them is essentially preserving the grid and allowing these plants to continue, and for new ones to be built, because Biden's plan would have killed all new power plants, coal or natural gas. Notice these are all reconsiderations because there's a process they have to go through. This is not DOGE where you just cut, you don't know what you're doing. Process, which is good. This will stick because it's going through the process. Reconsideration of light duty, medium duty, and heavy duty vehicle regulations. This is huge. These Biden regulations paved the way for the EV mandate by imposing unachievable emission standards on gas vehicles. Reconsider them is essential for preserving automobile choice. I'm reading from Alex. 3, reconsideration of the 2009 endangerment finding. We talked about this yesterday. This Obama-era determination by declaring CO2 dangerous allowed Biden to shut down power plants, slow U.S. oil growth, and lock up unlimited, limitless natural gas. Reconsidering it is essential for American energy dominance. 4, ending so-called good neighbor plan. This Biden rule set ozone-related emission levels so unnecessarily low that many vital coal power plants can't comply, even though ozone levels are very low throughout the U.S. 5, reconsideration of particulate matter national ambient air quality standards. These Biden regulations demand hugely costly cuts to U.S. PM 2.5 levels, which are already very low and safe. Reconsideration and limitation guidelines on standard ELG for steam electric power generating industry. These Biden regulations throttle coal power generation by imposing needless stringent wastewater standards. So basically what this is, mostly, not all, is unwinding of all the regulations that Biden put in place, a lot of them towards the end of his administration. It also undoes stuff that Obama did and just things that the EPA has been doing for a long time. For example, restructuring the regional HAZE program. This EPA program imposes major costs on electricity producers for minimally visible improvements in low pollution areas. So you've got all kinds of EPA processes, all kinds of EPA policies, some old, mostly Biden, some Obama, that are being reversed here. And it's huge. It's huge. Now, the direct benefits of this, a lot of it is going to be in not destroying, right? If these regulations are being allowed to stay in place, the energy market in the United States and the electricity market would have been destroyed. And some of them actually to improve. There's a lot more work to be done here, but this is a great first step. And it seems like the EPA is moving faster than other agencies in rationally, systematically, thoughtfully dismantling the regulatory state. And I think this is, you ask about objectivism's influence. This is the influence of Alex, to some extent at least. And Alex, of course, is influenced by objectivism. So there it is. All right, a final comment, just correction, I guess. I told you fake news, and I want to correct. I think it was last week or maybe earlier this week. I talked about Syria, and we talked about the deals that the Syrian government had cut with the Kurds and with the Druze. Now, I don't know if what I told you about the deal with the Kurds is true or not. I assume it is. I haven't heard anything to the contrary. But I have definitely heard to the contrary that the deal with the Druze did not happen. Literally, there is no deal. Indeed, I saw video of the spiritual leader of the Druze community in Syria, primarily in southern Syria, that he does not trust the Syrian regime. The Syrian regime is a radical Islamist regime, that he has no intention to sign a deal, and no deal has been signed, he said, and that the central government should not be trusted, that he and the leaders of the Jewish community will do what is in the best interest of the Jewish community. And, this fake news supposedly spread by Al Jazeera coming out of Qatar. Qatar is, I'm sure, a major sponsor of the new Syrian regime. The Syrian regime is a Islamist regime. The Qataris love Islamist regimes, particularly Sunni Islamist regimes. It's also sponsored by Turkey. Qatar and Turkey are very close. So, no, the Syrian regime, which is going around slaughtering Alawites, these Shiites, slaughtering Christians, and I think the Druze fear that they are next. Israel, in the meantime, has, it seems, given the Druze a security guarantee. They are working to keep the new Syrian army away from Druze-dominated areas. They have been bombing in southern Syria, but even bombing in Damascus, in the capital. I think Israel is sending a message to the rulers in Damascus. Stay away from our border. Stay away from the Druze. Even Druze in Damascus or in the Damascus area. Don't touch them. If you do, there will be consequences. We are here to protect the Druze. And there is a real movement within the Druze community to create an autonomous region in southern Syria affiliated with Israel. That is not quite, I don't know if to become Israeli citizens yet, although some, I'm sure, are advocating for that as well, but to affiliate with Israel and Israel to provide security guarantees. There is a very, very large Druze community in the Golan Heights, which is part of Israel since 1967. Those Druze are the ones who have chosen to be Israeli citizens. Some, over the years, have stuck to being Syrian citizens, but many of them are second-guessing that decision with what has happened with Syria. And I think the closeness of the Druze community with the Israeli community is only intensifying. And it's going to be interesting to watch what happens to the Druze community in Syria and what impact that has to the wider Middle East. All right, we have a little bit of time today, so let me add this one other story that is on the positive side. It's just in terms of, this is cool stuff. There's a small town in the Netherlands called Eindhoven. I've talked about this before. Eindhoven is where the headquarters of ASML is. It's a company, the only company in the world that makes machines known as lithograph tools that produce cutting-edge microprocessors, including all of NVIDIA chips are made by TSMC using ASML machines. You wouldn't have AI, and AI will not grow without this lithography machine. I'll talk about what kind of machine it is that ASML produces. Now, ASML's latest machine, which will be producing the next or the latest generation chips, weighs 150 tons. 150 tons. It's the size of 2 shipping containers. And it costs $350 million. It's the most advanced. The 2 nanometer chips, or whatever comes after that, will be produced by this machine. It is the only machine of its kind in the world. There is no other machine like it. It works, and this is a massively oversimplification, by firing 50,000 droplets of molten tin into a vacuum chamber. Each droplet takes a double hit. First from a weak laser pulse that flattens it into a tiny pancake. Then from a powerful laser that vaporizes it. The process turns each droplet into hot plasma, reaching nearly 220,000 degrees Celsius. I don't even believe that number. 220,000 degrees Celsius, which is roughly 40 times hotter than the surface of the sun. How can a machine do that? How can you produce that kind of heat? And then how can you not melt the entire machine with that kind of heat? It's stunning. Now, this plasma emits light of extremely short wavelength. It's called extreme ultraviolet, or EUV. This light is then reflected by a series of mirrors so smooth that imperfections are measured in trillions of a meter. Trillions. The mirrors focus the light into a mask or template that contains blueprints of the chip's circuits. Finally, the rays bounce on the mask into a silicon wafer coated with light-sensitive chemicals, imprinting the design onto the chip. Unbelievable. And I don't even understand half of that, right? And I don't understand how it works. And it's beyond any physics or any engineering that I've ever studied or even know. I mean, how do you do this? 220,000 degrees Celsius. How does a machine not, the complete thing melt? And anyway, somebody came up with this, the engineering genius of this, the ability to build such a thing. Of course, a machine like this is built from stuff made in at least 10 different countries. A lot of it from the United States, Germany, Taiwan, I mean, all over the place. Built in the Netherlands. How do you even transport this thing? Anyway, this is the machines that TSMC has. And if the United States ever wants to build cutting-edge chips, would have to buy. American companies would have to buy. The United States and the Netherlands have banned the export of these machines to China to prevent China from building the latest, greatest, best chips. Of course, in response, China is pouring billions of dollars into building alternatives to this machine, which I'm sure they will at some point. Indeed, Canon in Japan, you know, the one from the cameras, Canon, is trying to build a simpler, cheaper technology that will be able to produce the same sophisticated chips. So in spite of ASML seeming to have a monopoly over this, right, it produces 100% of these machines that can produce the most advanced chips. There are a number of other companies trying to outcompete it by producing alternative technologies that will produce the best chips. So, I mean, that's just inspiring. In spite of all the bullshit in the world, in spite of our focus on politics and the true morons, the real morons who run our political world, amazing stuff is still happening. Amazing scientists are still doing amazing things out there. Amazing engineers are still building amazing machines. Stunning that this is happening, and we all benefit from it by getting those AI tools that are just going to blow, change the world as we know it. And that's the thing that's happening. Our politicians are complete idiots, complete morons, trying to destroy the world. In the meantime, technology keeps us going and will keep us going. All right, that is the news for Thursday, March 13th. We will have a continuation of the news tomorrow at probably either 2 or 3 p.m. East Coast time. All right, I already mentioned Alex Epstein as a sponsor. I also want to mention the Ayn Rand Institute. But before I do that, I want to mention that I'm doing this seminar in London. Anybody in the UK, on how to apply rational egoism to your life, how to become a better egoist, how to be selfish, in your relationships, in your love life, in your career, in every aspect of your life. It'll be 4 hours from 1 to 5 p.m. on Saturday, the 29th, March 29th, somewhere in the center of London. I'm waiting to see how many people sign up so I can book a room. So please, if you're considering doing it, do it now in order to encourage you to do it this weekend rather than next week. I'm raising the price on Monday from £250 to $400. You can find information about this on my website, yaronbrookshow.com. And if you scroll down, March 24th will appear with this and a place to make a payment through PayPal. If you can't use PayPal for some reason, then drop me a note at Yaron at yaronbrookshow.com, and I will send you an alternative link to another payment mechanism. So, and then, of course, if you're on Patreon, you can use Patreon to pay. But, yeah, if you're in the UK and you'd like to participate, this is face-to-face. It's going to be fun and very personalized. You can ask your questions. We'll deal with your issues. So, come prepared. I might even give you a homework assignment in advance to come prepared. But if you're interested at all, please let me know. I'll save you a spot. And those of you who already know they want to come, please register ASAP so that I know how many people are going to be at the event so I can rent a room. All right, I will note that Ayn Rand Institute is a sponsor. They are looking for people who are interested in getting scholarships for OCON. OCON is the annual conference, Objectivist conference. It is amazing. I'll be there. I'll be speaking. I'll be playing poker. I'll be schmoozing. I'll be hanging out. So come and hang out with me, and we can. It should be a lot of fun and super interesting. And the lectures are going to be really, really, really good. So to apply for scholarship, pretty easy. Go to aynrand.org/start here, and you can find information there about applying for the scholarship. Finally, let me remind everybody that I do really, really, really value and am really, really thankful to anybody who supports me on a monthly basis, regular monthly basis. It's incredibly valuable to me because it's steady. I know it's coming. It's predictable. So if you're not a supporter yet, please consider becoming a supporter on patreon.com. Search Yaron Brook Show. You can also do it on PayPal. Patreon, I think, is easier for you. You can change the amounts over time, lower it, increase it. But please consider going to a Patreon and signing up, and increasing the steady, regular payment. So I, rely less on Super Chat if I can rely more on Patreon and on PayPal. All right. What do we want to do? Let me just do something here. All right. Let's see. Questions. There's a bunch of people who did stickers, and there were some big ones initially, I thought. So we are still short of our goal. So Alex, thank you for the sticker. So please consider doing a sticker or a super chat in support of getting us to the goal. We're about 110 short of our 2-hour goal and $361 short of our 3-hour goal, and we want to make the 3-hour goal. That would be good. That was Alex. Where were these others? Yeah, Glenn, thank you. Glenn did two $50 stickers, 2 of them. And Silvanos early on did $20, and Catherine did a little bit. So thank you guys. Really, really appreciate it. Particularly Glenn there, $100 sticker. That is great, and that helped us get to where we are right now, which is still a little short. So Stickers, you can do $2, $5, $10, anything you want. But let's start with David's question. $50. Thank you, David. I have seen experts suggest that Russia can't afford to stop the war as they have no other jobs for their citizens outside of arms manufacturing. Yeah, but that's kind of zero-sum mentality that so many economists have. And I think that the Russians have. That is, if they stop spending money on armaments, then they can start spending money on stuff that actually helps the Russian people, on stuff that Russian people actually need in order to live. They can cut taxes, they can do a lot of things, and they can return that capital to the private sector, which will invest in industry and create jobs for those people freed up from working on building weapons. So while it might be messy to transition from a war economy to a non-war economy, it's what America did after World War II. It's what America did at the end of the Cold War in 1991. You remember the peace dividend. This is not science fiction. It's certainly not difficult economics. It just means you stop spending money on destructive stuff. Building weapons is destructive. And you start spending money on productive stuff. And ideally, it's not the government who spends the money is returned to the private sector and you let them do it. It also means inflation goes down. Inflation is very high in Russia. Interest rates might be able to come down and the standard of living, quality of life of Russians will increase. Right now, in spite of those jobs, standard of living, quality of life is decreasing in Russia. David's asking a lot of the questions today. Come on, guys, step up. Can't leave it all up to David. And step with $20 questions, not just 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 questions. All right, David says, is Trump trying to cause a recession so the Fed will drop interest rates to almost zero so our bond payments are more affordable? No, I don't think so. I really don't think so. I mean, that would be the dumbest policy in all of human history. A recession is incredibly costly. It's incredibly costly tax-wise, so you get less revenue, so you have to take on more debt. So even though interest rates might be going down because you took on more debt in order to fund the spending, you're just paying just as much in bond paybacks as you did before. So a recession doesn't solve anything. It creates many, many, many more problems. And, well, it solves some things, but not anything for Trump. And it also makes him very unpopular with the American people. And in a year and a half, we'll have midterm elections, and I don't think he wants to be crushed in the midterms. So, no, I mean, maybe he thinks that. Maybe now that the probability of recession has gone up, that is a rationalization for what they are doing that's causing the recession. But it was never their intent. They're not that scheming and sophisticated. They're just pretty stupid, pretty ignorant of economics. And if now that is their rationalization, it'll blow up in their face because a recession will be very bad for debt, for bond paybacks. Again, because tax revenue goes down. So you have to borrow more. The way you deal with the bond paybacks is cut spending. Really cut spending. Which means massive reforms to entitlements. It means thoughtful, considerate spending cuts throughout the government, in every part of the government. But you cannot get to the kind of numbers you need without going after entitlements as well. But you can do this smart. I've done programs where I've said, what would I do in the first 100 days if I were president? And I articulate the case for how you would do this. It's not that hard. Cutting spending doesn't reduce interest rates, but cutting spending reduces the amount of borrowing you have to make. And that reduces the amount of interest payments you make. So if you go from I'm borrowing 2 trillion to only borrowing $500 billion, your debt payments will be lower because you're borrowing less. And if you could get into a surplus, now you're actually paying back debt and not taking on new. The debt as a total is not growing and interest payments are shrinking dramatically. That's what you want to get to. You want to get to surplus as quickly as possible, so you're paying back the debt as quickly as possible. But no, cutting spending doesn't in and of itself necessarily cut interest rates, but it could, because cutting government spending will decrease inflation expectations, and inflation expectations would reduce interest rates. Whereas a recession might reduce interest rates, but not reduce the amount of borrowing, increase the amount of borrowing, which would have the opposite effect of what they're trying to achieve. David also asks, you only focus on the economics of tariffs, but you ignore the political aspects. Trump gains support from his base. Well, for a while he does. But then when the cost of living goes up, and when it becomes more expensive, and when they lose their jobs because they're working in industries that are hurt by the tariffs, then it's politically devastating. So again, this is all emotionalism. It's short-termism. In the moment, yes, finally America is fighting back. We're giving it to those Europeans, and we hate those Canadians, and we're giving it to the Mexicans, and China, yeah, we're absolutely. But then they suddenly start losing their jobs, and I'm not sure that political base holds. Colleen says, do you think people should be making any adjustments to personal investments in light of the current economic situation? Not if your investments are long-term, because it's just so difficult to call it in terms of when things will turn around. Look, if you're investing for something you want to on money for something you want to expend over the next 6 months, year, 2 years, then yeah, I would get out of the markets right now. There's a real possibility markets are going to decline substantially. But it's only a possibility. I don't know how markets will behave. For all I know, Trump tomorrow will rescind all the tariffs. I mean, he's so unpredictable, we don't know. But if it's money that's important to you, you can't afford to lose it, and you need it in the shorter term, then yeah, I would get out of the stock market. Go into short-term government bonds, which are very safe. If you're saving for the long run, I just don't know how to time the market. Is today the best day to sell? Maybe wait because tomorrow the market will go up and you can sell then. But then how many days will it go up? When will it come down? I just don't like timing the market because I don't know how to do it. My investment philosophy over the long run, for the long run, is just don't look at your portfolio. Just invest in a portfolio you believe is well diversified, and then just sit on it. And over time, it'll do fine. And by the way, if you're well diversified right now, then you're losing money, but you're not losing a fortune, right? Because a lot of your money might have been in value stocks, which are not declining quite as much as tech. Some of your money was probably in international stocks, which have actually been going up as the US stocks have been going down. You might have had some in bonds, you might have had some in real estate, which are not being hurt right now. So if you're well diversified going into the craziness that's going on right now, then you're probably doing okay, and you can probably tolerate a little bit more of this. I generally have told people for a few years now that if they're investing in tech-heavy indexes, if they're investing in tech-heavy stocks, expect a lot of volatility. That is, they were expensive. And the way the market priced them, it was priced for good news. That is, you bought them under the assumption that only good things would happen. And now bad things are happening. It's not surprising. You should have anticipated this. And if you still believe in the good news story, then wait and maybe it'll happen. But I was not advocating for a tech growth heavy portfolio over the last 2 years. Now, I missed out on a huge increase. But, I for my long-term savings, I prefer slow and steady. Not zero, but, 7, 8% return every year. I'm happy that. I don't need the 25% S&P 500 year. It's insane. Last year and the year before that, the S&P went up more than 25%. I think 25, maybe 22 or something like that. That cannot continue. That is insane. We would do some bad news, some kind of correction, if you will. And we're living it right now. But something would have happened. All right. Thank you, Colleen. John, hopefully a flood of young bioscientists will present opportunities for venture capitalists. I can see scientists grouping together and presenting interesting business plans. I mean, that would be phenomenal. The reality is that a lot of nerdy STEM, stuck in a lab at Berkeley somewhere scientists are not good with venture capitalists. And a lot of the science that these people want to do is not the kind of science venture capitalists will fund because it's too long term. There is a place for non-for-profit funding or not short-term profit funding. Short-term, I mean 10, 15 years, that long-term, of science that the government is doing right now. It shouldn't, that you would imagine private individuals would do, some corporations would do, foundations would do, and universities would do on a for-profit basis, but over a very, very, very long-term horizon. Anyway, that is, but I agree with you. I hope venture capitalists, I think venture capitalists could use this opportunity to maybe go out and recruit some of those scientists to propose solutions that are good for venture capitalist type investment. John, if you need more proof of how tribalist this nation is, just a few months ago, Greta was traveling in a Tesla while Trump was mocking electric cars. Now the White House is a car dealership for Tesla, called the Swasticar by the left, yes. So Greta doesn't do Teslas anymore, but Trump does. All politics, all tribalism, no thinking, no independent thinking. Pathetic. Thank you, John. Great description, great call. All right, thank you guys. We've just basically made our 2-hour goal of $500, and now we're heading into third-hour goal territory. That's great. Andrew says, I'm intrigued by Salmieri's view that the last 200 years, collectivism is motivated by an attack on reason and self-esteem. I agree, though also believe many are skeptics of individualism on a metaphysical level. Your thoughts on this issue? I mean, I think the skepticism of individualism on a metaphysical level, or the skepticism of individualism, is motivated by a skepticism of reason. That is, I think it all boils down to reason. I mean, why was the Enlightenment individualistic and lead to capitalism and the birth of political freedom? Because it was a scientific revolution. Because it was a rediscovery and a re-emphasis on reason. At the heart of this is reason. If you undermine reason, then basically you leave yourself open to the need to be told what to do. if reason is impotent, an individual is impotent. And if the individual is impotent, he must seek out a group and a tribe to affiliate with. And the group and the tribe must seek out a leader who can tell it what to do. Because the one mechanism we as human beings have for knowing what to do is reason. And then beyond that, one of the things at a psychological level that people resent about the Enlightenment, resent about capitalism, is self-esteem. It's the man of ability, standing on his own 2 feet, but not just the man of ability as the giant, but any man of ability at any level. Standing on his own 2 feet, doing what he wants, producing his values. That is they take as an affront to good old-fashioned altruism and humility and original sin and everything that has to do with the anti-self-esteem perspective that Christianity has embedded into our world. And then it's just a matter of rationalizing that away. So you don't want to attack it directly. You don't want to attack the individual directly. So what you do is you attack what makes it possible, which is individualism and reason. So the motivation is envy, resentment, hatred of those with self-esteem, of the men of ability, of achievement, and ability and achievement at whatever level. I'm not just talking about the gazillionaires, right? So I agree with Greg. I don't think there's some kind of metaphysical theory that's antagonistic to individualism. I think that metaphysical theory usually is a rationalization for the collectivism that results from the rejection of reason and rejection of self-esteem. I think that's the sequence. That's the process. All right, I'll just remind everybody, like the show, please, before you go, because it really, really, really helps with the algorithm. Comments, come out here on the chat and do something. And don't forget to subscribe if you're not a subscriber. Every action you take helps the algorithm. And of course, becoming a subscriber helps the algorithm even more. Oh, Jose in the chat is saying, Mr. Brook, I have been a fan since I was 19 years old. Wow. You and Dr. Peikoff have literally helped me grow. I'm forever grateful for both of you. Wanted to give my first super chat. Hope to soon. Thank you, Jose. Really, really appreciate the comment. It's an honor for me to be in the same sentence with Dr. Peikoff. And I know that, everything I know, I learned, not everything, but a lot of what I know, I learned from him. So he is my teacher as well as your teacher. But that is great. Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. Really, really appreciate it. Danny, thank you for the sticker. Stephen Harper, thank you for the sticker. And I think I'm caught up on stickers. Sticker thank yous. David, most people don't want to make decisions for themselves. It's too much work. Well, it's much more work not to make decisions, right? Because then you have to suffer the consequence of not making the decisions. And suffering the consequences is work. But you're right in a sense that there is a certain laziness, a certain associated with shutting your mind off, just following orders, just doing what everybody else does, just being conventional. And that is the great tragedy, that too many people choose evasion. Too many people choose the lack of focus, the lack of engagement, the lack of using their mind. And the consequence is the lousy world in which we live. David says it's easier to be a victim. It's only easier to be a victim if you have a victim mentality. I mean, if I think about being a victim, I go, that's way too hard. That's way too hard in terms of the consequences, in terms of the faking reality, in terms of all that. It reminds me of Ayn Rand saying, I'm too much of a coward to be what? What did she say? I'm too much of a coward. Yeah, somebody, give me that quote from Ayn Rand, right? That I think is apropos here. I don't know why my mind is not going there right now. All right. Oh, there it is. Thank you, Andrew. I'm not brave enough to be a coward. I'm not brave enough to be a coward. It reminds me of that. I'm too lazy to be a victim. Not too lazy. I'm too something. Well, at the end of the day, I value my life too much. Do you find it unseemly that the major international negotiations occurring in Qatar and Saudi Arabia, theocracies hosting peace talks, that's something philosophically fitting to it? It's disgusting, it's despicable, it's horrible. Why we even have relations with these countries, why we tolerate them, why we elevate them to be our allies and to host these negotiations is pathetic and awful and horrible and scary. I think you should be scared if you're Israel or Ukraine or a free country. When negotiations are being held in an unfree country, the unfree outcome is more likely. Michael, amazing how the Fourth Reich is starting in America instead of Europe this time around. Remember the ominous parallels? Leonard predicted it. Not that I'm saying we're starting the Fourth Reich, but Leonard Peikoff predicted it. Not your average algorithm. Are you impressed with the growth of objectivism, or is it still pretty pathetic? I don't think it's either one of those, right? It's not growing fantastic, and it's not pathetic. It's growing steadily. I wish it was growing faster, so I can't say I'm impressed by it. But it's growing. And I am impressed by the growth of objectivist intellectuals, young intellectuals who I think have a lot of upside potential, as Greg Salmieri mentioned on the show the other day. And that will lead to impressive growth of objectivists down the road and objectivism as a movement down the road. Not your average algorithm. Has Dr. Peikoff changed his mind about Trump? I don't know. I have no idea. I've not talked to Leonard for months, unfortunately, not because of the Trump issue. I suspect he might, because of one issue. I heard through the grapevine that he was very upset by Trump's cozy relationship with Putin. And if I look at Mark Levin, who Leonard, I think, listens to his show, was also very upset by how Mark Levin was, very upset by how Zelensky was treated. So I think the Russia-Ukraine issue, Leonard, last time I talked to him, was a huge supporter of U.S. support for Ukraine. You make of it as you will. Last time I talked to Leonard, he was a huge, or not the last time we talked about politics. He was a supporter of U.S. support of Ukraine and very, very anti-Putin in Russia. And that issue might have changed his mind. Maybe the tariffs, well, Leonard might be for tariffs on China. I don't think it was on tariffs for Canada. So anyway, I don't know. I have no idea. You have to ask James Valiant. Ian says James Valiant has said he doesn't regret his vote yet. But that was before the Zelensky blow-up. So somebody should ask Leonard post-Zelensky blow-up. If it matters to you, I don't know why it should. I don't think it should. Anyway, that's for another conversation, another time in the future. Liam, why does Trump find Elon Musk useful? Will the best thing Elon be when Trump finally gets rid of him? Will the best thing for Elon? I think he finds it useful for a number of reasons. One, Elon basically bankrolled his campaign. He gave him $250 million. Elon is also just giving $100 million to a supposedly nonprofit to promote Trump's governance ideas. So Elon has ingratiated himself on Trump because of how much money he's giving Trump. He's the richest man in the world. He's much richer than Trump, and he's throwing money at him. Elon also has, it feeds him the kind of, feeds him psychologically stuff he likes. Here's the richest man in the world agreeing with him, supporting him, reinforcing his positions. I think psychologically, that is incredibly valuable to Trump. It's not just some underling saying nice things about him, but the richest man in the world saying nice things about him and being around him and wanting to be around him and encouraging him and all of that. I think that plays a huge, huge part in it. Shazbot says, I'm not brave enough to be a coward. That's a quote from Ayn Rand. Sounds like something Yogi Berra would say. Well, yes and no. I mean, because if you think about Ayn Rand, that's exactly right. Being a coward is so self-destructive. Same as being a victim, same as being a leech, same as being lazy, same as not being productive. It's too hard, too difficult in a sense of it, the damage it does to your life. Andrew, I guess that false red line the conservative decried in response to Obama re-Syria doesn't elicit the same reaction from them when Trump tells Hamas to release all hostages now or face hell. Yeah, surprise. They're all hypocrites. That should not surprise anybody. Yes, the red lines only exist when the other guys do it. They're tribal. We've talked about this. This is the tribal mentality. Anything Trump does is okay. I give Mark Levin credit for going after Trump over the Ukraine thing. He might also be critical of him on tariffs, but I'm not sure. Michael, do conservatives no longer oppose the welfare state because they think they can use the welfare state to control people the same way the left does? Well, yes, but also because many of their voters, I'd say a large chunk of their voters, are welfare recipients. The Republican Party has shifted to what they call the working class, which means people who receive welfare. And so they can't piss off their voters. And their voters are right now pissed off because a lot of funding that the government was giving that was flowing in their direction is not coming. They don't want to cut spending. All right, let's see. Liam, Rand taught me not to endure things, but to improve things. I wish more people had that mindset. The world could be a beautiful place. Yes, life is about constant improvement, constant growth, constant adding, constantly more values. This is why, yeah. I mean, the attitude of let's create a recession so that, God, growth at a personal level, growth at the level of friends, growth at the level of a country. Growth. That's what it's all about. Hopper, is it immoral to bring children into a world on the verge of collapsing into fascism? I don't know if you really believe we're literally on the verge of going into fascism, then possibly that's possible that it's immoral. You have to really believe that to deny yourself the pleasure of having kids, the great pleasure of having kids. I'm not as pessimistic as you are. I don't think we're on the verge of collapsing into fascism. I think things are going to get worse. I think we're heading towards, as I've said for a long time, towards stagnation. I think ultimately fascism is in the cards, but I don't know when that'll happen. And I wouldn't yet deny myself the pleasure of having children over that assessment. Now, there might be a day where, yeah, I would. Troy just came in with 500 Australian dollars. Thank you, Troy. Really, really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed the show you sponsored last Saturday, the one on foreign policy. And I will be doing on Saturday. I'll be doing a show, also that Troy asked for. I'll be doing a show on Saturday on how would I fix the Constitution. Now, I'm going to have a big caveat on that I'm not a legal scholar. It's not going to be wordsmithing. It's not going to be specific provisions articulated in a kind of a legal way. I'm not a legal philosopher. From my perspective, what is the U.S. Constitution today missing? What does it need added to be even greater than it is right now? That'll be the show this Saturday. Time to be determined, but 2 or 3 p.m. East Coast time. All right. Thank you again, Troy. Really appreciate it. That cleared our third hour goal. Michael, and thank you, friend Harper, for adding to that. Michael says, is Trump's victory the Democrats' fault for appointing a phony bimbo as their candidate? Couldn't almost any decent Democrat candidate beaten Trump? I think it is, to a large extent, the Democrats' fault, particularly to the extent that the Democrats could have moved to the center. Even she could have moved to the center. And they could have appointed somebody who comes more up from the center. And that, I think, would have allowed them to capture, as long as the Democrats could be associated with woke and DI and all of that stuff. Notice that the governor of California, Newsom, is distancing himself from all of that. He just did an interview with Charlie Cook, where he basically distanced himself from the more radical, crazy left. And she didn't, not enough. She distanced herself a little bit over the Israel issue, but she could have made much stronger statements. Newsom has already made stronger statements than she ever did, and she was running. On top of that, she had a record of proposing really bad laws when she was a senator for a short period, and she was awful. She does not have the capacity to speak off the cuff. She did very well with the debate with Trump because it was predictable. But as soon as she got into an interview with a journalist, she fell apart. She was just she was a terrible candidate. And yeah, in that sense, it's the Democrats' fault. I think Trump was very beatable. He won by a very small margin ultimately. And she couldn't separate herself from Biden because she'd been his vice president. She couldn't do it. So that was a real challenge. They should have brought somebody in fresh, somebody else new. Michael, what do you think Trump will do after office, or will he make himself dictator in 2028? I have no idea. I do not know. He certainly tried to run things from afar. He'll try to get his son to become president, or I don't know. Who knows? And he might try to run again in 2028. Wouldn't put it past him. But I really don't know. Beyond having his fingers in everything and trying to control everything and being on Twitter and tweeting constantly, I don't know. Capitalist Spy, you should invite Vincent Geloso to your podcast to talk about trade. You know, it's a good idea. I like that idea. I mean, there's so many good people on trade I could invite, but he's been good on the what these countries should do, and I haven't seen a lot of people make that statement. So yeah, that would be good. KO, your pulse on issues is unique. This political moment needs analysis, messaging, policy that drives America forward and reorients left-right. Maybe a video series from the frame of a new political party. Yeah, I mean, I've done a few of those, right? I did how a new policy on China. I did one on unwinding. What was the one I did? that Alex asked me to do? God, I now forget. Somebody remind me what I did a few weeks ago. I did one on healthcare, how to unwind our healthcare. So I've done a few of those. I mean, the challenge I face, and I don't know if any of you know how to get me out of this predicament, because I'm in a predicament. I don't seem to break through. My videos, some of my short videos go viral. That doesn't translate into a massive subscription increase. My long videos never go viral, but sometimes they get 4,000-6,000 views, and I see an uptick in subscriptions, but not a dramatic increase. Nothing seems to make a breakthrough into the culture so that I can go quickly to 100,000 subscribers. I do the capitalism thing for Peterson. It's beautifully done. It's great content. I'm in top form. I've seen an uptick in my Twitter followers. But, okay, so I got, 400 new Twitter followers. But it's not the tens of thousands one would need to break out. And I've tried, I've done these new analysis, policy perspective from a perspective of completely new political party outside of the left and right. And then what? You're not doing basic influencer stuff. Like what? What stuff am I not doing? I'm curious what you think. I did the interview with Stasso. We'll see how many subscribers I get from that. It just doesn't break out. It doesn't break out. I could advertise, and I don't. So that would be something I could add. But nobody else who's broken out is advertised. Like Richard Hanania didn't break out, and I'm not saying I'm as good as, but the reality in terms of breaking out, Sam Harris didn't break out because of advertising. Jordan Peterson didn't break out because of advertising. Hanania didn't break out because of advertising. Nobody that I know has ever broken out because of advertising. Yes, I could add people, and some of them would stay and some of them would leave. But I'm writing a new book, but my other books sold okay. But again, there was no breakout. So I don't know. I don't know how I do. I don't have an overlay on my stream. Okay, so I'm going to get an overlay on my stream. Overlay on my stream is coming. It's coming. That becomes a priority. I don't interview other people. I interview objectivists because I find it difficult to interview people who are not objectivists because then I want to get into a fight with them, and I don't think that's appropriate on my own channel. So I'm not an interviewer. I'm not going to break out, but I need an overlay over my stream. I agree with friend Hop on that. But no travelogue. God, but nobody, why would anybody, Sam Harris doesn't do a travelogue, never did a travelogue. Jordan Peterson never did a travelogue. I know you want me to become an influencer like the TikTok influencers, like the superficial, shallow ones. That's not the kind of influencer I want to be. I want to be an influencer like Hanania and Peterson and Harris and the intellectuals. The intellectuals. And I don't know beyond what I'm doing. I'm creating massive quantities of content on a wide array of topics. I've got articles out there. I've got stuff out there on arts and relationships, on morality, on all this stuff. They're still working on the Iran AI. Okay? It's in the works still. So I don't know. If anybody has ideas on how to do this, let me know. And the next step is figuring out how to do overlays in OBS. If anybody has ideas out there on how to do overlays in OBS, let me know. And if I did a travelogue, I could do a travelogue, but God, I would feel it would cheapen the brand. All right. Subicask. Americans should stop trying to copy Europe. Yes, definitely. But then Europe should stop copying America now. Either. Neo. What's a good book on Islamic Golden Age? I don't know. God, I read a bunch in the Islamic Golden Age, but I can't remember. There was an author who wrote a lot about the Middle East that I really liked. Older guy who's passed away since. Bernard Lewis. Bernard Lewis is good on some aspects of the Islamic Golden Age, but I read a lot about it. I literally read philosophy books about it. I read a lot about it, and so there's a lot out there. Just search the Islamic Golden Age. I mean, there's just a lot of material out there. Ryan, it would not surprise me if we hear about aid going to Russia from the United States if morality is out the window. Why not? Yeah, I mean, it's quite possible. It's quite possible that they cut some kind of economic deal. Trump has hinted at it. I don't think he'll be happy because he's staked so much of his prestige on this idea of a peace deal. So I don't know how that's going to affect him. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there was some deal. Colt. I don't think I'll be able to make it to your talk on Monday. I'll be about 2 hours north. One of those days I'll come to your events in North Carolina. I didn't know you lived in North Carolina. For some reason I thought you lived in Texas. But that's too bad that you can't come to my event in Wilmington, North Carolina. It should be good. It's at the business school. There'll be a large audience of business school students. It should be a good one. Moral Defense of Finance. Maribin says, thanks for covering the NIH funding. Let's discuss the nuances, you and I. Happy to do it. Let me know when. Catherine, I live in Europe, Austria. I would like to visit more events where I can learn about capitalism and individualism. Which events or organizations would you recommend? Well, first, there is the Einstein Institute does a lot of events in Europe. There's a conference this weekend. Is it this weekend or next weekend? This weekend in Berlin, where there are going to be 120 people, and there'll be a number of lecturers talking about capitalism and individualism. So that would be a conference next year. We're going to hold another one, maybe in Portugal, I think they're talking about. So I visit Europe often. As I said, I'll be in London talking about these issues. But then I'm often in Germany. I've spoken in Austria many times, in Slovakia, which is just across like less than an hour drive to go to Bratislava from Vienna. So I guess it depends where you are in Austria. But I speak in Europe all the time. I'll probably be there in the fall to do a tour all over Central Europe. There is an organization in Vienna called the Center for Austrian Studies or Austrian Economic Studies. Maybe it's called the Hayek Institute, Hayek Society. I think they're all related. Check them out. The people who run it are friends of mine, and they're not objectivists, but they're very good in economics. Friend Harper says, another idea, since you have books, is to sign one and run a raffle on it. $5 a ticket. You would make crazy money on one book, knowing your audience. A lot of your fans will never meet you to get an autograph. Yeah, okay, but that is not going to help me break out. I'll raise a little bit of money. That's all. I'm looking for ways to get beyond my fans, to grow my fans, to find new audiences. Mainly to find new audiences. to go from having my shows be viewed as 3,000-4,000 people on YouTube, maybe a couple of thousand on the podcast, to 20,000. WCZN. Interesting side effect of objectivism focusing on intellectual work and influence is that LLMs understand objectivism well, much better than any non-objectivist, and many supposed objectivists. That is interesting because there's so much material now, so much material online for them to educate themselves on. So yes, I think huge benefit. Christos, we look forward to seeing you and discussing rational egoism in the beautiful city of London. We'll try our best to avoid asking about Trump. That's great. I look forward to meeting you, Christos. And are you the one who's still pending on PayPal? So just, if you are, just make sure that that goes through as soon as possible. I think it was still pending last time I saw, which means the funds have not been received yet. So just check and see if that's the case. Esoteric dichotomy. Hey, Yaron, I know it's been covered before, but for privatizing Social Security, how do we address the massive unfunded liability for those paid in? You do simple things like you increase retirement age. You might make it, what do you call it? You don't pay Social Security to people who have an income of over $500,000. I don't know, something like that. You make it means dependent at a very high end. And then you start phasing it out. So the 65-year-olds get everything they were promised. The 55-year-olds get 90% or 80%. The 45-year-olds get 60%. And the 25-year-olds get zero. And then everything is funded through taxes. But you've got to raise the retirement age, and you can change the indexing to inflation a little bit, and that makes a big difference. And the index to inflation right now is too generous. It uses an index that overstates inflation. So there are all kinds of little things you can do while also phasing it out, which will solve the problem. Andrew. More on collectivism's motive from Rand, quote, Tui's purpose is to ruin the strong, the single, the original, the healthy, the joyous, by the weapon of other people, of humanitarianism, or if I had myself, collectivism, right? Yes. And that's all driven by resentment and envy, ultimately. Slug, have the left lost or are losing the moral high ground, but there is nothing to replace it? Yeah, I think that's definitely the case. There is no moral high ground right now, and nobody to fill in the gap. There's just a kind of a sense of altruism. There's not even a Mother Teresa commitment to altruism. There's just a sense of altruism. Okay, WCZN video. Standard advice is release 100 videos, varying many things, titles, thumbnails, format, visuals, music, etc. Get concretes. Since I started watching, content, style, feel is unchanged. Well, this show maybe, but I put out, I don't know, 400-500 short videos last year. Shorts, 1-minute videos with all kinds of styles, all kinds of concretes, all kinds of ways, all kinds of music and visuals, games even. I put out maybe 200 or maybe more, but at least 200. What do you call it? Segments from the show. So highlights from this show. Granted, those have the same style. But again, I go back to the people I respect in this field. Don't do that. Ben Shapiro hasn't changed his style. Neither is the successful podcasters on the left. Neither have again Sam Harris, Joe Peterson, and so on. Yep. So I appreciate all the ideas. It's just, I mean, here's another one. Esoteric, the economy says, for channel growth, I think more appearances with people who are popular helps. Sure, but that's not easy. Talk to Michael Malice again, Ben Shapiro, maybe Destiny, Sam Cedar. Yeah, I'd love to talk to Ben Shapiro again. Not so much Michael Malice, but Ben Shapiro again. But he's not going to have me on. And the reality is that when I first went on Ben Shapiro, it didn't add that many people to my channel. Maybe I got another 200 subscribers. That's good. I'll take it. But it wasn't breakout. It just wasn't. I've done Lex Friedman. Hundreds of thousands of views. Didn't break out. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'll try Destiny. I'll keep trying. I keep getting in front of new audiences, keep doing new interviews, and the effect is minimal. The effect is minimal. It can't be regular because they don't want me. You think I haven't tried getting on Joe Rogan? I haven't tried going back to Lex Friedman? You think I haven't tried going back to Ben Shapiro? I haven't tried to go. They don't want me. So you can't do it regular unless they want it to be regular, and they don't want it to be regular. So again, this is all, that's great in theory. I get it. It's just not doable. It's not doable. Christian, hey, Yaron, what's your stance on editing and reposting their content? I don't know. I don't know. My attitude towards editing and reposting my content is do it as long as you give attribution. And hopefully you're doing it in a way that doesn't distort my message. But yeah, feel free. A lot of people take my stuff and turn them into short videos, and they, a lot of them do it very well. Anyway, to be continued, my striving to go viral and to break out is there. And it's just a matter of how we do it and how I do it. And I'll just keep creating content and keep playing around with stuff. We'll do the overlay. Maybe this decoration has changed. This is much better than it used to be. The lighting is better. It's more aesthetic. It's more. Yeah. Robert says, sad, but there is a limited appetite for objectivist content. We work on delivery, try to develop star power, charisma, panache, but it's a small pond. What do you mean? I have star power, charisma, and panache. It's done already. They told me if you build it, they will come. I built it. They don't come. What's up with that? I agree with you, Robert. It's a limited pool. It is what it is. Irvin Porcupine says, devil's advocate here. Shapiro, Harris, Peterson got famous circa 10 years ago. What worked then may not work now. Okay, so who's getting famous now? Richard Hanania got famous over the last 3 years. Give me some people who got famous over the last 3 years doing this, not doing videos about cooking or about travel or about restaurant. Doing this. I don't want to do a travel log. It's not interesting. Why would anybody care about my travel log, right? Yeah, Hawk 2 girl. Yeah, she got famous, but that's not what we're looking for, right? The point is not to compare to how influencers who are dumb, stupid, idiotic, and appeal to dumb, stupid, and idiotic people. How do you succeed as an intellectual? How do you go viral as an intellectual in this world? Who are the intellectuals going viral right now? No, you see, maybe you need a Yaron meme coin. I'll do the meme coin once I break out. Then I can make a lot of money on the meme coin. Right now, if I did a meme coin, 5 of you would buy it. 5 suckers would buy it, and I wouldn't make enough money. So. Yeah, figure out who are the people in the last few years who've gone big and how they did it and what am I doing? What did they do that I'm not doing? Alex Connors, yeah. But Alex Connors partially got big by going on other people's shows. And look, it's easier to do if you're conventional. It's quite possible that it's impossible for me to break out. That is true. It's quite possible. It's impossible. But let's try. Let's try. No, you can't take the principles that the dumb influencers do, because the things that the dumb influencers do impacts dumb audiences. It doesn't impact the kind of audience that I want and will stick with me. I don't think that it's transferable. You have to really think about what's transferable. Instead of that, let's look for intellectuals who've broken out and find what has led them to break out. That's the only way to do it. All right, Andrew says, aren't you impressed by how much you make in Super Chat? Aren't you in the top 10%? How do you reconcile that with not having more viewers? My viewers, you guys, are super committed and you're super generous. You really do believe, a subset of you, really do believe you get a lot of value from me. And I accept that. There are 1,000 people out there, 2,000 people out there who really do believe they get a lot of value out of me. Some of you are too poor to make a difference in terms of financial contributions. Some of you are not. But so there is a committed core that is the most generous, committed core of anybody, any of the influencers out there. And in that sense, I'm a huge success. There's no question about that, right? But the only way to really take it to the next level financially, but much more important from my perspective, take it to the next level from an influence perspective, is to go to 100,000 subscribers quickly, right? So, yeah, and my guess is that I make, just generally on the show, Jeffrey, we need to talk. I'm glad you're here. Thank you for the sticker. My wife and I are coming to New York. We need to schedule dinner. So I will email you. Sorry, Jeffrey just reminded me. I will email you about dinner that my wife will join me in May. What was I saying? Yeah, my point is the people who are here are fantastic. Fantastic. I mean, how many people have a Troy who comes in with as much money as he does on a regular basis, or a Michael who asks questions every single show? And I don't know how much he spent over the years, a huge amount of money. And Andrew who asks questions every single show and really pushes the envelope on the questions, and David who's asked $50 questions regularly. I mean, there's just so many of you that are really, really, really generous and that show up every show and are here. And you make the show possible. Without you, it couldn't be possible. And my question is not so much money. My question is, how do we break out? How do we break out influence-wise, numbers-wise? You can't influence unless you get numbers. Can't influence to get you the numbers. We are doing great on Super Chat. Now we have to do great on subscribers. I'm 1/1,000,000th in subscribers or something like that. I don't know how much I am. We need to get 100,000 quickly, and then 1,000,000. That's the measure, and the money then will be relatively easy, I think. All right, guys. The numbers, sadly, those numbers haven't grown much since 2022. Which numbers? The Super Chat grows every year, it's grown every year. Super Chat is growing every year. Income generally from the show is growing every year. And I expect it to grow again this year. So But it's just, but that's, I mean, that would be nice if it grew faster, but that's not my primary concern. My primary concern is influence. All right, guys. Thank you. I appreciate all the support. We did great today. And I appreciate everybody interested in how to grow the show. That is fantastic. And if somebody has new, interesting ideas, then send it to me by email, yaron@yaronbrookshow.com. If there is somebody out there who's a professional at this, who thinks they know professionally and have done this with intellectual content, how to take it the next level, and you think you have a solution, I'll hire you. So let me know. Yaron@yaronbrookshow.com. That's my email. All right, everybody. See you tomorrow. I'm going to go to dinner, and I will see you all tomorrow, and have a great rest of your Thursday. Yeah. Hopefully you had a good time. Bye, everybody.